So I'm looking forward to those initiatives as well as others coming from within my ministry also. And moving forward, we were as a ministry already working out our year plan objectives for 2017, looking at what our strategic objectives and global or general objectives were within our governing program. And so we hope to have that finalized by the end of January. In terms of that, the entire ministry will then be moving and flying in formation in a sense of we're solving the problems together, not just as a ministry, but interministerially as well, knowing when we need to collaborate and actually sitting behind that, because we've seen in the past where the intention for collaboration is there, but actual execution sometimes falls behind, and with everything else that's going on, following up doesn't always happen. So we're looking on improving our collaboration internally as well as externally with other ministries, other organizations, and strengthening those associations who are out there receiving our subsidies and executing works that we are responsible for. So we expect, of course, more accountability. We expect that they will be doing better reporting, and we will strengthen you and have been strengthening these organizations to do that. In this year of 2017, I call it a year of action, but also accountability. And so I look forward to us as a community, as government organizations, doing that. I would like to at this time also remind study financing applicants that the deadline for applications is on January 16th, as the 15th falls on a Sunday. So January 16th would be your last day to make sure that your applications are in the physical form. Of course, online applications are done, but you still have to have it printed out, signed, and brought to the department. Some students feel that because they don't have all of their documents that they cannot finalize the process. However, do check in with the Study Financing Division to make sure that whatever documents are missing, that you have a new deadline to bring those in, but definitely make sure that your application is in by the deadline to be considered for study financing. In that discussion, I would also like to remind study financing applicants, those who are already receiving study financing, that it is not necessarily a right based on our laws as they are right now. We have a limited budget for that. It's a responsibility, actually. And while we, based on the criteria and the priorities and based on the draft laws that we are using, we are actually finalizing that law in 2017. You have an obligation too, as the student receiving these funds, and a responsibility to live up to your obligations. Around this time of year, we get a lot of complaints from students who may not have done as well as they should have, and so they've run into problems, and they expect rules to be bent for them. And I must say that is very, very difficult to explain sometimes to parents and students in such a small community where everyone knows everyone. But I would like to make it very, very clear that there is only one way to teach responsibility, is by acting responsibly and knowing that there are consequences to your actions, whether they be good or bad. And so those students who are working hard and continuing to maintain the grades to maintain their study financing have no problems. Those that do, you have to at least inform the division in time so that they can take you into consideration before taking the necessary measures. Many students expect to come at the last minute, and they have a very good story, but the process is already underway. So I'm asking you to keep up. There are many mentors and many academic advisors within your schools. Make use of these opportunities. Make use of all that the internet and the World Wide Web has to offer you so that you can be successful. And if you run into problems, if you inform us in advance, we are more inclined to work with you to help you over your rough trails. But maintaining your grades is of tantamount importance to maintain your study financing. So I wish especially all those students returning back to school in the coming week and next week, or who have already left the island to return to school, much success in pursuing your goals. Those that are staying on St. Martin that are returning to school today or have returned to school today and during the rest of the week, I wish you much success, knowing that your actions will determine your future. Go for it, work hard. St. Martin deserves you doing your very, very best.
Firstly, let me again wish those of you here present, but also those listening and viewing, a happy and prosperous 2017. 2016 is behind us, and we look forward not only to 2017, but as Minister Lee said earlier, we look forward, we are planning, we are preparing to be here for the next 4 years. It is a totally different dynamic, working firstly in a government from November to December, back and forth as to whether we would be able to postpone the elections. We got that done for 9 months, so you had a 9-month deadline, so to speak, to work with. And now we are looking forward to being in office for 4 years. Not that it means that the government will now relax and take it easy because you have 4 years, but it gives you a better opportunity to plan and prepare and to execute and to tackle many of the problems that we have had to deal with over the years and could have never gotten to them. Not only this government, but past governments as well, as we have had 5 governments in 5 years, or now our 6th government in 6 years. I want to welcome the Minister of Justice, my neighbor, Mr. Raphael Bosman, who was not present last week when I introduced, or 2 weeks ago when I introduced the other ministers at the first press briefing after the swearing in. As explained, he had prior engagements and could not be present, left immediately after the swearing in, and we are happy to welcome him to the fold. One of the things that, and as you know, in the absence of the Minister of Economic Affairs, Mr. Bosman is also filling in for the Minister of Economic Affairs, and in his absence, the responsibility fell on me. And one of the things that I hope to have a discussion, well, I will have a discussion, but I hope we will be able together with the department, with the ministry, to beef up immediately, is the time that it takes for someone who requested a help driver to get a permit. Now, one would say, is that a priority for the government? It is one of the many things that government needs to work on. Government, whether we want to believe it or not, is actually the largest service provider in the country. We have to provide service to the people across the board. Every day there are people who are asking government for something. It is not everything that you ask for you can get. There are hundreds of people who apply for a job and they cannot get the job they may want or have applied for. There are many people who have applied for government land and there's no land left to be given, and so we can go down the line. But when someone asks for a help driver's permit, it is not something that government has to give them like a piece of land or even like a job. It is a permit that government should be able to put a mechanism in place. We've done it in the past. It can be done again, whereby if you bring it in early in the morning, you can have it in the same afternoon. If you bring it in on Monday, you can have it by Tuesday. I have been signing off on many help drivers permits, and when I looked at the date, some of them have, been submitted. Some of them go back to March and April of 2016. Now, if someone is operating, whether it's a bus or a taxi, and for medical reasons can no longer operate his vehicle or cannot operate a vehicle for a period of time, they go to the doctor, they get a letter, and they bring a help driver, someone who is registered, had the appropriate licenses to operate the vehicle in question, and they ask permission to employ this person as their help driver. Now, if you have to wait from April until the 30th of December for a minister to sign off on a request that you have made, it means that that person either did not have a help driver for all these months, or the help driver was operating illegally for all of these months. Whichever way a solution was found or a solution was not found, it is not good and in the interest of the license holder. So we hope that this will be a matter of the past under this new administration. I want to also express sympathy, if you want to use that word, to the family and the young man who suffered injuries with the explosives. The explosion that took place at the turn of the year with fireworks. Interestingly, also, the Minister of Romi and myself spent, I think it was the 30th of December, along with the Firefly operators, the Arundel family, the people who sold fireworks down in the area by Le Quebec. Along with them, the department of the fire department, prosecutors, police, trying to resolve an issue about fireworks that they imported and whether it met the requirements or not, and whether the interpretation was correctly applied or not. But here it is, we've spent basically an entire day. And prior to that, there have been back and forth between the fire department and themselves. And here is a company that has done all that it can do to put the proper procedures in place to ensure that they have the proper licensing, etc. And we are now investigating because we are told it is someone who imported or was selling fireworks, illegal fireworks, for which they had no permit. Now, we do not know at this point, at least I do not know at this point, if it is true, A, B, who sold it, and or who bought it. Fact is, however, that a young man has had serious injuries that will affect him for the rest of his life. And it is unfortunate that we have persons who would, if that is the case, indiscriminately, sell fireworks that without a permit. Now we can look at the discussion that we've been having back and forth with the fire department in terms of making sure that the firework live up to the proper safety standards, and to ensure that if it reached a certain criteria, that qualified persons or under strict supervision, these things would be lit. And then on the other hand, you have someone who is, selling illegal explosives that have resulted in serious injuries to at least one person. The Council of Ministers is almost in full force here today for our first press briefing. Of the 6 ministers, 5 are present. Notably absent is the Minister of Finance. He is presently, if all goes well with Insular, should be touching down in the next half an hour or so. The Minister went to Curacao for a meeting with the Council, the Council General of China that is based in Curacao. Both Minister Gibson and myself have been invited for a meeting that took place yesterday. I could not leave the island at the time, so Minister Gibson is the only one that attended the meeting. It was no major formal meeting, but it was, among others, to further discuss the cooperation between China and St. Martin, and specifically the project, the Pearl of China, was part of the discussion as to how, we are moving forward with it as well. We have tremendous challenges as St. Martin. We are a little island, a small country with just 16 square miles. And whenever I have to speak at any conference, investment conference and things like that, and even at the timeshare conference, when you say you come from a country that is 16 square miles, and then I tell people, don't get the picture that it's 4 miles down the Palmetto and 4 miles down I-95, and you box it in and you have 16 square miles, and that is our country. It is much different to that, but at the end of the day, no matter how you turn or twist it, we remain a country of 16 square miles, and there is so many miles or so much land space that we have available. And with the development that we have had on St. Martin over the years, there is very little left. So there are quite some challenges to fit the Pearl of China project in the entire development of St. Martin, but it brings tremendous advantages if carried out and carried out responsibly, which we are sure it will be. The opportunities it creates for the future of St. Martin immensely. So we hope that this project too is one that will get off the ground in the early part of this year, and we can look forward to the completion of this project in the future. In closing, I would like to again thank you for the cooperation that we have received in 2016, and look forward to working with you in 2017 as we continue through you to bring our message and information to the people of St. Martin.
I'd like to open the floor for questions the media might have at this time. Bibi Hart Shaw, SMN News Online. Good morning. Happy New Year to you. You have the floor.
Happy New Year, Cedric. Good morning to the Council of Ministers. I'd like to wish you and your family a blessed and prosperous New Year. I will take on Minister Lee. Welcome back. It's been a while. Just some follow-up questions. Last year, I asked you in the Council of Ministers press briefing when I heard that there were some investigations taking place into job placement agencies, the Housing Bureau. I know at least one of them were being investigated by the ministry, especially because they are not living up to their tax obligations, SZV, and other obligations they have to workers. Can you tell us if that investigation is really taking place and how it's moving forward, even if you don't have to divulge all information on the investigation, but I'd like to know if it's moving forward.
Yeah, go ahead.
To my knowledge, the investigation is ongoing. I don't know to what extent or whether they're, how they're conducting that investigation per se, but again, that's one of the things that I will get updated on, but I do know the investigation is continuing.
Your minister, the Justice Minister, who is a veteran in the labor industry, also said that instead of creating prisons, we should provide jobs and less incarceration. How is the Ministry of the Department of Labor working into placing people into the job market, especially those that are on social welfare?
Again, that's part of their regular task, is trying to place people into positions. As you know, when people file for work permit requests for foreign labor, one of the first steps that they need to do is to do a search either through their database and through advertisements to see if there's somebody available for the position. I believe that there's opportunities for that to perform better. One of the things that we worked on previously was opportunity.sx, so trying to create a website portal for connecting employers and employees. There's also cooperation with private sector in terms of job fairs. There's a number of different activities that we're working on. As we go forward, one of the things I'm looking forward to is cooperating in particular with the Minister of TIAT, in that I believe that creating micro entrepreneurs is also a great way of creating employment. As I've mentioned before, I think the process that went with VROMI with the district cleanup, where the districts were broken up into smaller districts where micro-entrepreneurs were given an opportunity to create companies to bid for those jobs. And so by making them smaller districts, it made the capital requirements less. It made it more accessible for companies for a starting company to begin. And I think that trend of creating those micro-entrepreneurs is a good trend, and look forward to cooperating with the other ministries to do that. And then, we've worked on labor reform. There's a proposal at Parliament for a fairly drastic change to our labor system, because I think our labor system, quite frankly, doesn't do the best job in terms of stimulating employment within our community. And so I think some revisions to that will also help to stimulate employment.
And my final question to you.
And if I may point out, according to our surveys, unemployment, especially amongst youth, is much more correlated to education than to their age. And so again, one of the things we'll be working on is how do we make sure that the graduates from our school system are properly equipped for our local job market. So it's a cross-ministerial cooperation, and also the ministry is obviously doing what it can.
And my final question to you, Minister Lee, as a follow-up question, prior to the election and during the election and everything like that, you were working on the new hospital. I'm not talking about what the outcome is, I'm talking about the financing of the new hospital. And one of the things you said that is that the Dutch were willing to finance the hospital. Are you looking in that direction? And along with that, I'll also ask you to expound a little bit on how the vetting procedures go for especially doctors that are coming to work on the island. And I thank you for now.
Regarding the financing of the hospital, in previous discussions with the Dutch government, they expressed a willingness to consider financing. It does not mean that they've agreed to finance. It was dependent on a number of factors, including developing a business case. That business case is in the process of evolving. Given the court case with where VAMED has stopped the procedures with the hospital for the moment, and the possibility of a much more expensive hospital being built, which will be financed over the backs of the people. So a company with no local interests other than making money is stopped the process, and the possibility is that the hospital will be a much more expensive hospital. That translates into higher tariffs, that translates into higher premiums for the people, which translates into a modified business plan. The modified business plan was based on what we felt was a very practical and affordable hospital. So while SZV is now taking on the appeal of that decision, it means that we need to go back and revisit the business plan, which again, like I said, if the outcome is a more expensive hospital, has financial consequences for the entire country. Regarding the vetting for physicians, there is an entire process to that. It's outlined very clearly. I think the bigger issue is what are the consequences? So what is the complaint mechanism, and what are the consequences for physicians or medical personnel that don't perform correctly? And I think that's one of our priorities going forward as a ministry, is making sure that in everything you need a system of checks and balances that ensures that if you have bad behavior or bad outcomes or bad decision making, that there's a consequence. And that applies for business, government, as well as for physicians. So if we look to elevate the quality of care in St. Martin, I think that we're looking for a proper feedback loop, a proper mechanism where good physicians are rewarded, and if there's problems, that there's consequences.
Thank you very much for your questions, Bibi. Andrew Dick, Daily Herald. He has the floor. Happy New Year to you, Andrew.
Happy New Year. Minister Christophe Emmanuel, last week you mentioned the car wreck situation. You wanted the residents to pick up their car wrecks. Of course, your car wreck in front of your house was the topic of discussion. So, any reason why that is still there?
Thank you very much, Andrew Dick, for your question. Interesting question, actually. Yes, I was not surprised that I did saw the car wreck, in the Daily Herald, and I was a bit taken aback with all the discussion that surrounded that situation. I'm going to take a page out of what the Minister of Finance told me. He said, "Don't worry with the critics. You just keep putting your best foot forward." But interestingly enough, it's under investigation. You knew what happened a couple of months ago when the car was blown up. And consequently, because of that, both vehicles, the Jeep that is in front and the truck that is in the back, that also belongs to the neighbor, you cannot touch them because they are under invest. Funny thing is that you can't even clean around them. For whatever reasons, we don't know. But we were told by the prosecutor's office, by the police, that you cannot touch the vehicles and you cannot remove them. And that's the reason why, until I don't know for how long, it is still under investigation. At this present moment, I haven't received a police report. I haven't received a fire department report. I haven't received anything. And the last I heard about it is when the prosecutor itself put out a story in the newspaper saying that it's an ongoing investigation. And because of that, being an ongoing investigation is why the vehicles are still there and you cannot remove them.